Please know that some of the material in this program may include views or recommendations of third parties which do not necessarily reflect the views of Manatee Educational Television or indicates its commitment to a particular course of action. METV cannot be held liable for the accuracy of information that has been provided by third parties.
Hi, this is Del Jacobs with Manatee Educational Television, and we're here today with filmmaker and storyteller Robert Altman, who is being honored at the 8th Annual Sarasota Film Festival. He was recently given an honorary Academy Award to go along with his several Oscar nominations. Mr. Altman is here with his latest film, A Prairie Home Companion. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Sarasota.
Happy
and here
to
to the
be here.
Longboat Key Club and Resort. The commercial is out of the way.
Good.
Okay.
It's
a great place.
I'm going to sleep in one of its beds tonight.
Good. Before touching on some of the 30-plus movies that you've made, let me ask you about Prairie Home. Most people are familiar with the radio show. I was pleased to see the film a few weeks ago. But what can they expect from your film?
Well, I think if they're familiar with Garrison Keillor in the show, they'll know who he is. They'll know what the format is. That it's a radio show, but they play to an audience.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it easier for us. And all we really did to the show is add some of these characters like Lily Tomlin and Meryl Streep and Lindsay Lohan and John C. Reilly and Woody Harrelson. And so we put Kevin Kline, and we put those people in it. Tommy Lee Jones and Virginia Madsen. And so it just grew.
Lily Tomlin and Meryl Streep played the Johnson sisters. Now that's a unique...
The Johnson girls.
The Johnson girls, okay. That's right. We don't want to spoil anything. It's a backstage and a front stage story, much like your film Nashville was.
Yeah, it's very, very similar to Nashville.
And it mixes comedy and drama.
Yeah.
Is this being touted as a musical, though?
I don't know how they're selling it. It's this film, but I've done a lot of musicals that aren't designated as musicals, and Nashville was a musical, and but it's never called that.
No.
But there was a hell of a lot of music in Nashville.
No, in some of your films, the music is very sardonic. Suicide is Painless in MASH, or the beauty of Leonard Cohen in McCabe, or as you said, Nashville. And the soundtrack, I'm waiting for the soundtrack to this film. Will there be a soundtrack?
It's just out, and it's terrific, I must say. I think it's pretty good.
Did some of the performers write their own music similar to Nashville?
Garrison Keillor wrote most all of this. It all comes from Garrison. No, but these performers, no, they didn't do their own stuff.
There's a mix of some older music as well. I think Lindsay Lohan does Frankie and Johnny.
Frankie and Johnny. Well, it's all kind of older music.
Yeah.
It's parody. It's all music that you've heard. It's what you would hear on Garrison Keillor's radio program.
So if you see this film, it's like going to watch live radio being made, watching a live performance, and watching a movie. I felt like I was having three different experiences.
Well, that was the idea.
Well, it succeeded.
And I hope so.
You shot in Minnesota.
Yeah, shot the whole thing in the Fitzgerald Theater in St. Paul, where his show is done from.
Were you drawn to this material? I know you have somewhat of a Midwestern background. Did you find an affinity to the material?
Well, I'm sure it had my own history and background had something to do with my appreciation for it or attraction to it. But it just grew like Topsy.
Well, you heard some of the people that are involved in this film, and I've heard many people refer to you as an actor's director. When you hear them say that, what do you think?
Well, I love that. I mean, I don't know what they mean exactly, except I hope what they mean is that I make the actors do all the work.
There are some terrific scenes, especially between Kevin Kline and Tommy Lee Jones in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some amazing chemistry, and I know that's part of the notion that the ensemble is the preferred way that you work.
Well, I work this way a lot. I made a film with only one actor, Secret Honor.
Right, right.
And so there wasn't any overlapping dialogue in that.
Right. Today we are saturated with film festivals and with film classes at schools. I certainly owe my livelihood to that. Everyone seems to pretend to know how it's done. When you started out, there were no film schools. In your estimation, how has the whole explosion of film culture impacted the magic of movies? Because they're just light and shadows.
Well, it's just given more opportunity to more people. It's made it more accessible to the artists, because it's, you know, these kids can now take one of these machines and make a whole movie, and on their credit card, and they do it.
They do, and there's some surprising results.
You bet. How
do you stay in touch with what's happening now? Do people send you things to look at?
Well, yeah, occasionally, but I pay attention.
I'm sure. Your career's taken you from industrial films and documentaries through television and then to the movies. And in all those years, we've also seen the audience kind of shift from a relatively passive spectator to now where we can watch movies on demand. We can watch them on an iPod. The audience is more in control of managing the consumption of the image. Does that please or dismay you?
It worries me. It takes away this captive audience. When you buy a ticket and for $6 or $8 or $10, whatever, I don't even know what they cost anymore, and you go sit in a dark room, your attention is going to be on that movie, except when you go out to get the popcorn and that sort of stuff. But it's now when you can watch these things on the television or on DVD or whatever these various things are, you can get up and go get a beer and come back and say, did he kill her yet? And that's not very encouraging to me.
No.
And so I have to think about who really are my audience? Who do I have to deal with, and in what way? And so you kid yourself into thinking that everybody is interested in the same thing you're interested in. But I'm afraid they're not necessarily.
I'm afraid you're right. The great contract between an audience member and you, the filmmaker, is our surrender for 2 hours.
I try in the very beginning of every film I make it very difficult. I try to put the audience on warning by saying to them, you better pay attention because I'm not going to tell you this again. And you're not going to hear it again. So if you don't pay attention, if you're going to go out to get popcorn, keep on going.
Do you find some satisfaction in revisiting some of your films from the past in either retrospectives or by contributing to DVDs?
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's no film I've ever made that that I won't sit down and look at. If I were on a desert island with great projection of all of these films by myself, I would never look at any of them. But if some stranger floated by on a raft and said, "Oh, I've never seen Images," I said, "Well, let me show it to you." I'll sit and look through the whole thing through the backs of their heads. So I'm really looking at it. It's fresh to me, and that's the most joyous part of it.
I got to tell you, the first time I saw MASH, I was with my 60-year-old journalism teacher, who was a nun in her habit. And this was back in 1970, and we left early from some meeting, and she wanted to see Patton, and I wanted to see MASH. And they were on this double bill. Fox had double billed those back in those days. And it's one that I'm pleased to say Sister Albertus made it through, She had to get through Hot Lips and Hawkeye first to get to George Patton. Very hip sister. So your films have certainly personally infused me with so many great memories. You've worked both inside and outside the so-called system. Fox, Paramount, UA, Disney, they've given you paydays. But there have also been Fine Line, and Lionsgate, USA Films, Artisan Picture House, and others. What are some of the pluses and minuses of being inside the system or outside the system?
Well, if you're inside the system, you are a victim of it. You're a captive, because they're going to ultimately they're interested in selling tickets. Now, they all are interested in selling tickets. But it costs them so much to run their big machines that those films, a film that I would make, say Prairie, would cost, $30–35 million to make. And we made it for, I don't know, some 15 or less. And mainly that was paying the band all the time. We shot it in 22 days, 23 days. So, and it doesn't need any more than those days. If we had had 60 days, and the picture wouldn't be as good, because it wouldn't have it would come more from the technical people than it would from the artists. So I much prefer to stay on the low budget side, and also these actors, they're doing it because they want to do it.
Right.
They're not doing it because they're getting a $15 million paycheck.
Most people may not realize that $15 million is not even the promotional budget for some major Hollywood films these days. There's a lot of reliance on multiple plot lines in, say, cable television today and some network shows, but you nailed it years ago in some of your films. One of my students was raving about the new film Crash, and I told him to check out Shortcuts.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was just an absolute... I have no comment.
No, but I'm trying to restore your faith in some of the young filmmakers to be. This student not only took the book, but also the film. So they've been invited to look at the short stories as well as what you did with them in that marvelous work.
Well, the credits even read based on the writings of Raymond Carver, and but it was all of Raymond Carver.
Right. Okay. Let me share one other influence that just in the past week I was able to judge the Young Filmmakers Forum, and one of the short films that a high school student made, in his production notes, he name-checked you and The Long Goodbye as an influence, and it certainly was there, more than just in a character named Marlowe. I like the way that your films juxtapose the real and the fantastic. Brewster McCloud. That's one that I don't know if as many people are familiar with, but I lived in Houston at the time, and I remember reading the press reports daily of the coverage of shooting that film. That must have been an interesting experience.
That was exciting. That was a lot of fun, and that picture disappeared. No, nobody supported it. It came out the same year as MASH. I remember that Judith Christ, who was a critic, had both Brewster McCloud and MASH on her best 10 list. And Brewster McCloud was ahead of MASH.
Now, for those of you that don't know, this is about a young boy who believes he can fly.
Well, he builds some wings and he does fly. He crashes, though.
And if you visit the Astrodome, you can see where he tried to fly, right?
Yes, and where we tried to fly.
I remember walking into a theater to see California Split, and I'd never been to a casino or gambling hall before, but I thought it just sounded real.
Well, it was real. It was a very real atmosphere, that atmosphere. All the extras, there was a group called Synanon then that was started. It was ex-alcoholic. It became Alcoholics Anonymous. And we went to this group, which was run by a guy named Dietrich, and we hired the whole group to be our extras. So when these guys were in those gambling situations, the racetrack and the poker games and all the various things, there was a reality to it. They weren't just extras. They were part of the fabric of it, and it showed. It showed that whatever that is that those gamblers and addicts have.
Yeah. But it came across.
Yeah.
And if you, when you get a chance to see Prairie Home Companion, I know you're going to be inspired, if you haven't, to catch up on some of these other films that Mr. Altman has made. I think A Wedding is coming out on DVD very soon, if it is not.
Yeah,
and
yes, it
Images.
Yeah, they're almost all out now. I did 2 years ago. I did an opera at Chicago of A Wedding. I mean, we made an opera out of it. Bill Balcom and Arnold
You will not
Monson.
stop working, will you?
Well, I had it's getting up and going out and playing.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure spending these few minutes with you here at the Sarasota Film Festival, the Longboat Key Club and Resort. An honor to meet you,
room.
Mr. Altman. In room, we won't say, right? This is Del Jacobs from Manatee Educational Television. Thanks for being with us.